Do you know, I know a little bit about Higgins, Texas.
Oh,
Very
you
little
do.
bit.
I didn't know anybody knew that.
Well, do you know that that's the first place Will Rogers went whenever he left home?
The 101 Ranch.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
yeah, I've
yes.
heard about that.
Is that where you grew up then? And
No,
Oh.
that's not where I grew up.
Where did you grow
My mother
up?
died when I was born.
Oh,
9 days after, or 10 days after my birth, my mother died, and I was not raised in Higgins.
oh. So did you move away from there, or then? Well, you moved away from
Well,
there, but
I had an older sister who was 18 months old when I was born, approximately, and my dad had he had a brand new baby, me, and my sister, 18 months or 18 months or so old, and he didn't. What was he going to do with him? And there was nobody. Obviously, I don't remember this. I wasn't there. I was there, but nobody was talking to me. Or if there was, I was just gooing. But in any event, I was sent to live with my grandparents, the Reeds, and at that time they lived in Abilene, Texas. And I went there and lived with them. I came back for a couple of years with my dad. He remarried, and I had a half brother, Jimmy. And I was there for a couple of years, and then for some reason I was back with the Reeds, living with my grandparents. And I lived with them in Nocona, Texas. Went to school the first year in Burns Flat, Oklahoma. And I was the only kid that wore shoes. And I didn't wear any the second day. But anyway, I started to school the first grade in Burns Flat. They moved to Nocona, Texas, and I lived there for a year or two, and then they were back in Lubbock, Texas. And I lived with them in Lubbock at that time until I was 15. And my grandfather was away someplace. No, I don't recall if I was even told where he was. And my grandmother and I had, I'll say, issues. And we had it wasn't really a dispute. She preached a sermon to me that hurt me very badly and made me very angry. And I ran away the next morning. And I made it from, I ran away and headed for my dad, who lived at that time in Gage, Oklahoma, which is about 300 miles from Lubbock. And I had $6 that I had earned picking cotton. Everybody lived in Lubbock picked cotton. And I got my $6 during the night. My grandmother went to bed and I went to bed, and I got up and I was very angry and hurt. And I got my $6 was behind a picture up on the piano, where people put stuff those days. And the next morning, I rode my bicycle supposedly to school, which I did every day. And this was right after World War II, not long after World War II, and they hadn't built any new school buildings. And so we were going to school a half a day, one school, and then we would move out and another entire school would go into the building in the afternoon. I had the morning. So I was supposed to be home about noon. I rode my bicycle to the bus station and bought a ticket to Pampa, which is about as far as I thought my $6 would buy a ticket. And I got on out and started hitchhiking again, and I hitchhiked on to Gage. And I made it within several hours, and my dad, of course, didn't know that I was coming. They didn't call him. Of course, people didn't have cell phones.
Didn't have a way to call.
Nobody had cell phones. A lot of people didn't even have a phone in their house. He had a cafe in Gage. He wasn't a restaurateur, but he had a cafe. He was a cattle trader. My dad was a cowboy and a crap shooter, and a card player, and had never been a father. He'd never had to be a father. He'd never been allowed to have a father. The circumstances didn't allow him to be one. But in any event, I had gone back a time or two in the summer or at Christmas. They let me ride the bus. That's how I knew you changed and headed for, I knew Pampa was on the way. And I went into his downtown cafe in Gage, and the lady in there knew me. He had a lady in there that was cooking, and he wasn't there yet. My dad was a late sleeper. He didn't get up till 8 or 9 o'clock, and he came in a little bit. I was the only one there, and she said, "Well, Bill, are you?" And she didn't ask me anything about what was going on, and so I didn't have to tell her. And she said, "Your dad's not here yet." And she asked me if I'd wanted some breakfast, and I said, "That'd be great." I hadn't had anything for 24 hours, and she fixed me some breakfast, and pretty soon my dad came in. He walked by, and he said, "Howdy," and I said, "Hi." He didn't. And he turned around and he saw that it was me. And I said, he said, "Bill?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said something, and I said, "I've run away, and I don't want to go back. I want to live with you." And I don't remember him saying anything. He said, "Well, I guess I better go call him and let them know that you're okay." That's the first thing he thought was, he better go call the Reeds. And he didn't have a phone in that cafe. There was no phone there. And he went to a nearby business, I think, and I never heard the conversation. I never asked him about the conversation. He never told me about it, and I never knew about it. But I lived with him then, so you've asked me if where I lived, and you've got a kind of a long story, but that's...